If you're old enough to remember when phones had cords and the only thing that went viral was a cold, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Big 6-0 with Kaylee Harris and Guy Rawlinson. Because who better to discuss life's second act than two people who still think mature is a type of cheese?
Well, welcome to the Big 6-0 podcast. And if you're listening for the first time, thank you for joining us. Us being me and my primary school marbles buddy, Guy Rawlinson. G'day.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm really well.
Now, in the Big 6-0 podcast, we explore what it's like being in your third age in 2025. How am I supposed to act? How am I supposed to look? And what am I not supposed to say? And how can I embarrass my children? It's something I work on every day. We mix that in with some guests who may or may not have reached this milestone and explore their lives as well, because I believe everyone has a story. Now, I had the absolute pleasure of seeing our next guest perform on stage a few weeks ago. And I have to say, after dancing all night, I'd seriously needed the Nurofen and the Voltaren. This show was called Celebrating the Music of Countdown Live, and it's hosted by and performed by none other than former Cockroaches frontman Paul Field, who's joining us today. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Carly and Guy. It's interesting because you mentioned the marbles. I remember you saying that Guy lost his marbles, and I didn't know what you meant by that.
We're recording.
Should I just leave now?
Now, I want to go back to your early beginnings because your family story is extraordinary.
Yeah.
You're one of 7 kids.
Yeah, God help me. Yeah.
Your mum, Mari, your dad, John, a pharmacist.
Yes.
And they lost a child, Mary.
Yeah, Mum's first born child was stillborn.
Yeah.
And, so I think she would have anyway, but we were all treasured, really were.
Yeah.
And I guess, life was treasured. There's a lot of joy in our childhood. And even though that's an awful tragic start to marriage, it was a very joyful marriage and full of fun, music, kids, and chaos.
I can imagine. Now, you grew up in Sydney's West.
Yeah.
In a housing commission area.
Yeah.
Your dad was the local pharmacist.
Yes.
Tell us about, and you just mentioned then about music.
Yeah.
How important was that to you and your family growing up, and how did it shape who you have become now?
Oh, it's a part of our DNA. It really is. And Mum still says to this day, learning to play an instrument or enjoy music is as important as learning to read and write. And she was a musician herself, still plays piano, played music to us all the time. Very Catholic tastes in the sense of from Gilbert and Sullivan to the Beatles, Man of La Mancha, like stuff probably not a lot of other people were playing, but she loved it and she cranked it too, and Dad loved music, wasn't a musician himself, but encouraged it. And so we sung down at the church. Mum would play organ at funerals, at events, Christmas Eve. It was just part of our lives. And it left an imprint and very much, as I said, part of the fun of our life was music.
At what point, though, I mean, there was chaos in the house. At what point did it become not just a hobby, perhaps, or a passion that you thought there's potentially a career in this?
We never really thought of it in those terms because that kind of sounds business-like, whereas we were just like fanatics about music. By the time we were in high school particularly, and I went to a boarding school, and like brothers of mates of mine would say, you've got to get into the Stones or Slade or whatever it was, right, and that's how okay, yeah, sure, right, and so I became a Stones fanatic, and so did my brothers, because that's what you do, you share the music, and of course Elvis and everyone else, and so music at high school, Johnny and Anthony actually were in the orchestra, they played violin and so on, and then we started mucking around together as a band in high school. And the ultimate dream was to do a gig, right? Not to make
Just one.
seriously, like as in, as if we could be, make a record or be famous or anything like that. It was just all about doing a gig. And I had a burning bush moment with music. And I'll tell you, it was the year 10 dance with a local girls' school. And our year put together a rock band. There were guys who played together. And they said, we're going to play the dance. It's like, great, okay. And they said to me, hey, mate, you're a Stones fan. Why don't you get up and sing a couple of Stones songs? I went, yeah, sure, right? So I did Honky Tonk Woman, and I can't remember the other one. But then again, I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. Speaking of over 60.
There you go.
But
Who are you again? Yeah.
But here's the moment, right? So particularly being boarding school boys, God help us, you go to a dance and you had about 5 minutes to pick anyone to go, will you dance with me? Whatever. It was so confident. And anyway, so I get up and sing these 2 songs. I get up off stage, same nerdy bloke, and 2 girls came up to me to say g'day.
Wow.
Now, that had never happened in my life.
So that was a moment for you.
That's a defining moment, right?
Yeah, I'm still talking about it. and that's the point. As in, geez, suddenly behind a microphone, you get a focus, it's fun, and there's girls. I'm being honest with you here, Kaylee.
Yeah, that's because I would imagine it would be very difficult as a guy going to a dance and all the girls are there and you sort of, which one do I pick? And they all hang out in groups and you don't want to get rejected, but yeah.
Well, and particularly because I went to an all-boys school, right? I mean, I had sisters, but that's different, you know?
Yeah.
And, we're just all nerdy, don't know anything about anything. And so, it's a big challenge just to go up to a girl and say something, But it's funny because when I did leave high school, and good friends of mine at Sydney Uni, we'd all get together. And my now wife, Pauline, I met first year out of school. We didn't start dating for a little while after that. But she said, actually, you blokes were more polite because you hadn't had as much experience with girls. So I thought, well, that's not bad.
That's a credit to your mum and dad too.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. But and also Johnny and Anthony played in a band while we were in school. And then while they were still in year 12, I don't know what came over me, but I just thought, we got to do a gig. We've got to do a gig. Where are a lot of the gigs? Up in King's Cross. Where I thought of such a thing. I literally approached the guy who ran the Australian Heritage Hotel in King's Cross. And this is in 1979. And even now, if you're released on bail, they say you can't go to the cross. It's the land of naughtiness, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What was the pitch?
I looked up what the bands they have and all that, because they were having bands. I said, mate, look, I got a band called the Cockroaches. You don't have anyone on Sunday afternoons, right? So we'll come and play for free. So you got nothing to lose. But if you dig us and you get us back, you pay us next time. An offer you can't refuse. Yeah. And for us, the boys were still in high school, for God's sake. Yeah. So we technically weren't old enough to be playing there. But anyway, let's push that aside. The licensing police are all dead now. But anyway, so we did the gig, and it was just basically like a party for friends. Hey, all the girls we knew, all the mates we knew, come down, we're playing, and it's free. So, it was our audience, our age group playing, and it was fun.
And it was your people?
Yeah, it was like our own party. And then my sister was going to a college at Sydney Uni, Sancta Sophia, and they had a punk night, whatever that meant. But because we were called the Cockroaches, they got us. Yeah. And so we played there. And so really, from then on, we got uni gigs and school gigs. So I still run into people online and offline and whatever in person, to a woman who may have grandchildren by now who says, you played my year 11 formal.
Yeah. But where did the name the Cockroaches come from? Why not obviously not the ladybirds or the butterflies, but where did the Cockroaches come from?
Okay, I mentioned we were Stones fanatics.
Yep.
We were, right? And the Stones played a secret gig. In fact, they still do this today where they do a warm-up gig in the front of the public, right? It's always different, just rehearsing, right? So pressure's on. And when they did the secret gigs in that year, they played at the El Macambo Club in Toronto, which you can go to, and there's Stones memorabilia, and they called themselves the Cockroaches.
Oh, brilliant.
And also, it's kind of a piss take of the Beatles. Sydney's full of cockroaches. Yeah. And I kid you not, I mean, God help us, we literally put the name together for a gig. And people remembered it too. It kind of had, it ticked a number of boxes. Yeah.
And that whole work ethic thing, I mean, we've heard it before, but it just ramped up, didn't it? Because you started to get more and more and more gigs.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole Cockroaches are the most work ethic orientated band that are going around.
Yeah, well, that's it. Actually, one thing we did have, we loved what we did. And I reckon that's like the flu. It's infectious, right? And it really is. Like if you're having a good time, so do the audience. And we're very much a part of that. That was, and so we got a good name for having a good time. And if you went to see us, you'd have a good time. And I'm not harbouring on the gender breakup here, but it was mainly women of our age that came to the gigs. A famous, infamous, funny story. Mick Wells, I think the huge slide guitarist for Rose Tattoo, Cockroaches were playing at the Graphic Arts Club one night, and he's mates with Graham Kennedy, not the TV host, but a Melbourne guitarist who was in a band called Finch. And so he's mate with Mark Evans, who was in AC/DC, who's mate with Mick, right? So that long-winded intro, Mick's at the gig, right? And just to say good day. And Graham says to me, come over, Mark's over here and Mick's here. I said, oh, great. I gave him a Mick, here you go, mate. And he said, I want to be in your band. And I laughed, as you did, because Rose Tattoo and the Cockroaches weren't exactly. I said, great, wow. And he said, look at your audience. He said, they're fantastic. Our audience are all blokes and bikies.
Of course,
good point, Mick. Good pick. But yeah, so we got a good name for being live. And yeah, we played multiple times, sometimes per night, right? Every day of the week. Every state in the country. And yeah, the Daily Telegraph once did a poll through the booking agencies of the band that played the most in a year, and we were it. And it impacted, and so we'd done singles over the times which charted independently. And then luckily enough, I think you got to have something, but everyone needs a bit of luck as well and good timing. And we were supporting the Uncanny X-Men, if you can remember the Uncanny X-Men, and a very similar audience. And we were down at Selena's at Coogee Bay.
Oh, classic venue.
Yeah. And the guy, there's a producer called Charles Fisher who did everyone from Savage Garden, Moving Pictures, The Gurus, you name it, all right? And very successful guy, right? And he was at the gig, and Martin Fabini, who ran Regular Records, was there. And we were on performing, and Charles can spot a few things, a hit, potential, and whatever. He said, mate, are you signing these guys? And he said, oh, I'm not sure. He said, why? He said, look at this reaction. These guys can sell records, right? Which is a great line, right? So Mark went, okay.
Yeah, what a great compliment.
Yeah, and how about you produce them? And so he did, and because the debut album came out, and it debuted on the Sydney charts at number 2.
Wow.
So
not a slow burn then.
Not a slow burn. And so, we had great success instantly. When I say instantly, we've been playing for, 7 years or whatever, but, and we did all the shows, Countdown, Hey Hey, Saturday, Sounds of the Morning. It was a buoyant industry, and we rode the last wave of that pub rock era in. We had great fun. We loved doing it. It was all the dreams that you had, and even more. So we were on cloud 9.
Did it ever occur to you that it might have been too much as far as the work and this? No,
not. I mean, no. It's we loved it. I mean, God help us, 3 of us were brothers, right? Our brothers, I should say. We didn't divorce. So it was great. It meant we got stuff done really quickly because you don't muck around with relos. You can cut to the chase. Sometimes not in a wonderful, friendly, buoyant way, but and so occasionally, you're literally driving around in Tarago together. There were tensions and whatever else, but A lot of bands get into trouble because of that, but whereas we played sport and just fought each other that way, seriously, right? You know. So, and my wife Pauline was dating me at the time, and she couldn't believe it. Right? She's got a couple of brothers, but they're much younger, and she said, "You pick me up, and we'd be going to the gig, and Johnny and Anthony would be in the car with me." We drive to the gig, and she said, "You blokes would be arguing about something. Normally nothing, but just, going full hammer and tongs. Right?" She's thinking, "God help us." She said, "You get out of the car, you grab your guitars, whatever." And she said, "It was over."
Yeah.
You get on stage. She said, "If my sisters and I fought like that, it'd be a year of fighting." She said, "You kind of get it out of your system ferociously, and then it was over."
Yeah.
And which is probably a good thing,
So let's talk about the band. So you've got yourself, you're singing.
Yes.
Johnny's playing guitar.
Yes, and Anthony on guitar. Jeff Fatt, who eventually became a Wiggle.
Yep.
On keys, Tony Henry, who went to high school with us.
Yep.
On drums, and originally Phil Robertson on bass, and then Peter Mackey. But that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, and your first album went gold and platinum.
Yes.
So this is around 1987, just so we're placing the time,
Thank you.
was. And as you said, voted the hardest working rock band in Australia. Sometimes doing, still can't believe this, 3 shows a night.
Yeah,
that's extraordinary.
And to briefly explain, in case you're thinking I'm BSing, you do like a regular gig at, say, I can remember it's the Sam Miguel over the North Shore there.
Yeah, I remember it.
You'd finish it at say 11, then we'd zoom over to Sydney Uni for one of the colleges balls at probably 12:30. And then go to another college balls, which would go all night, right, at 2 a.m, right? And that sounds like, God help us, what a wasteland. But no. Those balls, uni balls at those times, you'd pay a fee and you get food and grog and the bands all night, right? So, like a BNS, whatever, people were there the whole night. And the extent of them, one of those in the early days, we came on at John's College Ball before NXS.
Oh, no way.
Who were an up-and-coming band in one of those early shows that we did. It's just like they were the way you got to people. They'd see you at uni, they'd see you at college. And then the difference in the era then to now, the biggest bands of the time, from Chisel to Crowded House to the Oils, everyone like that, they would come not only to your city, they'd come to your suburb. Right, so they'd play the Comb and Cutter at Blacktown, the Family Inn at Rydalmere, Sutherland.
You're talking my language now.
Everywhere, your local pub, and they'd be packed out, So it was an awesome time to be in a band.
Yeah. Your dad was a pharmacist.
Yeah.
What was it like during that time with your parents? What was the feedback from them? I mean, were they going, "Oh, what are you doing, son? Like, boys, get a real career," or they just said, "Okay, this is what you're meant to do"?
No, they were incredibly encouraging, and I didn't realise how great they were as parents till you start talking to mates, right? Even my wife Pauline and her parents were wonderful, but if they got in trouble with a teacher, they go, "Hey, come on, Pauline, you should be doing this." Whereas we go, "Oh, so and so's a bit of a whatever," and they go, "Okay." They'd be on it more. Dad would be on our side. Yeah. He had a great line oftentimes, and we were rat bags, so we got into trouble fairly frequently. He goes, 2 things, Paul. Go easy on yourself and don't tell your mother.
Classic dad line right there.
Life advice right there.
And but to explain also, Dad had a cardiac arrest in 1969 when he was in his mid-30s, and he survived. And a spiritual kind of guy. And so he said after that, "I've got to kind of do good things for the community." Right? And he's a really community-minded guy. So drugs in the western suburbs and Sydney anyway had just started to kind of creep in. And he thought, "Okay, that's something I can do." He talked in high schools about the proper use and the abuse of drugs. And it was great, very common sense stuff, right? Way before life education, really new ground. And also kids that he had once weighed on the weighing machine at the pharmacy were now teenagers and late teens getting into drugs. And parents would come down to me, "Oh, Mr. Phil, my son's doing this, what do you think?" So Dad thought, gee, okay. And he started to counsel addicts dispense methadone, for God's sake, right? Very hands-on with that. And so apart from being an amazing bloke like doing that, we saw the reality, the sad reality of what drugs can do to you when you abuse them, right? And also the takeaway from that was you'd see some kid who's, caught up in drug abuse, and would say, now, I know the family they come from. It's a good kid. He's just made a bad choice,
How did you stay off the drugs? Being in the music industry, I could imagine was fairly rife.
Yeah.
Your dad's a pharmacist on one hand,
Well,
and you guys go into music. How did you stay, or did you stay away from the drugs?
we did, because we had seen all this,
Yeah.
right? And Dad also said, if someone's into something positive, so go for it, because it keeps them busy, keeps them away from stuff that can keep busy in a negative way. And so, because we loved music, having seen kids go off the rails, he went, go for it. So he didn't say a word about the cross being a bad thing. He just went, look after yourself. You know what's right and wrong, go for it. And we were offered everything you can imagine, right? Particularly in the cross. And I can tell you a funny story. This is a true story. Our brother Patrick's a big bloke, 6'3", I think, and formidable. He's a rower, just a rugby player. Don't mess with Patrick, right? Anyway, he's a funny bloke. And we're backstage. It was up the cross, actually, at a club called X, which is not an erotic place. This is was just a music venue. And anyway, a bloke comes backstage literally with a bag. And I'm talking, he could have come straight from Keith Richards, opens up the bag, and he said, what do you want, guys, right? And basically my brother Pat said, mate, you're a drug dealer, right? He laughed. He went, well, I guess I am. And Patrick laughed again and said, boy, have you come to the wrong place. And again, we had no disdain for it. It's just like, no, we don't do it. No worries, mate. See you later. Yeah. So, once you've said no, and that's it. So that's how we kept away from that. And I'm glad we did, It was from an educational reason and a lived experience that we saw with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just move on to something very private? 1988
yes.
was a devastating year for you and your family with the loss of Bernadette.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that whole part of your life?
Oh, sure. So in 1988, we had another album out. We'd had great success, still kicking, Countdown and everything else was on the air. So it was kind of like, this is going to last forever. Things were great. And I toured a lot. I also was home a lot in between tours. So by that stage, we had two children, Luke, who was 2, Bernadette, who was, born on the 20th of January in 1988. And in September of that year, I was touring up in the band were touring up in Queensland. And literally the night before, in the days before mobiles, this sounds ancient history, but we kept in contact by a landline. And my wife was staying up with her parents up in the Hunter Valley. And she literally put Bernadette on the phone, who'd just started little crawls, and they taught her to say ta-ta. And so they put on the phone to me, and she literally said ta-ta, whispered it, which was beautiful. And Pauline put her to sleep, and this is just remarkable. The next day, it was the first Red Nose Day around Australia, and that's awareness and fundraising for the prevention of sudden infant death syndrome. And during the night of the early morning of September 2nd, Bernadette died in her sleep from sudden infant death syndrome. Never been sick a day prior to this, no indications, just terror. Pauline finding her, racing to the hospital, but she'd passed, and the doctor very soon was able to say that's sudden infant death, and so I mean, our world fell apart. I came down off the road from touring, and look, it's still with me. It's the worst thing that can happen to you. I don't want to gauge differences of grief and the rest of it, but we're not meant to outlive our children, let alone at that age when there's no idea of what's happened. And not many people knew about sudden infant death in those stages. So, it's through us. And I think there were changes in the industry. Not that I think there were that year anyway. And venues started to change, and Countdown went off the air, radio changed. So it kind of all came together where things were suddenly the year after 88 different, and it was harder. Even though we'd had huge success, we had a good name, we still pulled people to gigs, but it was harder. And I must have been very hard to travel with. I imploded. No one could relate to me. I was just very quiet and overwhelmed with everything. I sought counselling, which was great, and that really helped me through. But the fun kind of went out of it for a while. And a year or two after that, Anthony said pretty much that, like the work was hard going. We'd travel all around the country, but it was harder, you know. And Anthony was kind of the canary down the mine who said, oh, it's not that much fun, you know, it's not, you know, and I'm going to finish off my uni degree, because he'd done a year of a degree in early childhood studies. And I said, I'm going to finish it off and see what happens from there. It's like, what, how can you do that? You know, but we worked around him, you know, coming and going. And that's when he finished that degree. He then said he'd had the experience with us. Cockroaches were still going, but we were kind of wounded, you know, and the industry was different. So he said, I'm serious about this as a way of getting a job as a preschool teacher, because not many blokes teach in preschool now, let alone way back then. I should make an album of music. And I should say, actually, at one of the Cockroaches get-togethers, our meetings where they'd say, here's where you're touring, you know, blah, 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 blah. Once Anthony's into something, it's 100%, right? And back to the drugs. If any of us got into drugs, I reckon we'd last a week at most, because whatever we do, it's over the top, right? You know? Anyway, Anthony, luckily it was kids' music rather than smack. And he literally, because I've got to say, I understand it now, because I'll say this, and I'm fair dinkum about this, you know, there's something magical or of the divine with music, right? And I saw this with the Wiggles over the decades I worked with them. You would have children or people on the spectrum where nothing gets through to them, or very little, sorry, I should say, where they're non-verbal, blah, blah, but music does. Music comforts them, excites them, brings joy to them. And anyway, so Anthony was just taken with this, and he said to us at one of these Cockroaches meetings, we should make an album of kids' music, which is like, yeah. Well, I'm laughing about it now. It was probably a bloody good idea. Yeah. But it actually was good we didn't join him, because that meant he had to do it himself, and he knew what he was doing. And perhaps, like, just even though we were just born very closely together, I was May 61, Johnny May 62, Anthony May 63, there's a weird kind of breakup of things where, you know, I booked our first gigs and it was kind of the cranky older brother, come on, you need to be here. Not cranky all the time. Johnny was the main songwriter and Anthony was the fun lad, right, you know. So it was good he went by himself to make this album, even though he pulled Jeff into it and some mates from uni. But we might have interfered with that process. Like John might have said musically, you know, da-da-da. Whereas he did invite us into it. And he said, Johnny, have you got any songs for us? And Hot Potato Johnny had.
Oh, wow, that was a Johnny song.
That was absolutely a Johnny song. Yeah. And because I've got to say, in that era when Anthony's at uni finishing off his degree, and the Cockroaches are still going, but, you know, things are a bit different. They would busk a lot. Excuse me. In the days when people actually paid dollars. In the days when people had money, coins I meant, and that type of stuff. And they would literally go down to Circular Quay and do real show-off, attention-getting stuff, which is what we always do. But I mean literally playing Wooden Heart by Elvis, where the whistle solo, Anthony would put it in his nose and blow through his nose.
Younger brother stuff, right?
Thank you. I was about to say it, but yeah, you got it. Attention-getting stuff. But they, excuse me, they would jam songs, and Johnny, that's where Johnny first sung Hot Potato, and it was called a call and response song. Hey boys, do this. Hot potato, hot potato, hot potato, hot potato. You know, and it was just a fun rockabilly kind of song, you know. So that was the process from the earliest day, where the Wiggles were the Wiggles, but they'd pull in help for various things.
And can you tell us how, I love this story, and I've heard it before, but I love it, how Jeff got involved in the Wiggles.
Okay, so Jeff, great piano player. Anthony, just great piano player, full stop. And we needed piano, they needed piano on the tracks they were playing. And Jeff's always, whatever house he's got, whatever flat he's got, he's always working on it, right? That's his kind of meditation thing, you know? And so he's doing up his flat somehow, painting or whatever. And Anthony rings me and says, mate, we're doing a recording. Come down and play keyboards. He said, how long's this going to take?
Or 20 years, 30
33
years.
years later. So it was great. And Jeff was Anthony's musical right-hand guy for the 20-something years he was with the band, you know? Yeah, so
And
it was great.
you've said that luck plays a part
Yeah.
in every band or every career.
Yeah.
When was that moment for the Wiggles?
Oh yeah, that's timing and luck. So we had had this great success, and Anthony decided, why don't I combine the early childhood education I got and our musical pedigree? He didn't put it in those words, but that's me. And the timing. There was a woman who worked at Festival Records who distributed the Cockroaches, right? And it was her first week running ABC Music, okay? And Anthony and the Wiggles took down the tape of their album, and it was like a uni project. They had a folder explaining every song, very serious lads.
Couple of
these were.
spreadsheets.
Yeah, no, seriously, right? The educational background, da-da-da. And Meryl thought, well, I know two of these guys, and boy, they've had success. They can write a great tune. And she gave them a go, right? She gave them the benefit of the doubt. There was nothing like them. And there's always a thing about being unique. You know, now you can say, you know, like the Wiggles. Then it was like, who are these guys? What can I? But she literally said to me later, they're young, good-looking blokes. I know they can write a tune. Might as well give them a go.
Yeah.
And she said to Anthony at the time, look, you know, after they said, we're going to sign you, they said, look, at most you might sell 3,000 copies. Anthony at the time thought, 3,000 copies, wow. Just for early childhood, it was like unheard of, you know.
Yeah.
I must add, she must add something, Meryl, because that same week she also signed Lee Kernaghan, who is still to this day one of the ABC's biggest sellers. So thank goodness we went in, you know, at that time, and it just grew organically, bit by bit. And the good thing was, Anthony was forward thinking and using the experience we had in the Cockroaches. So we did like a dozen film clips, and we eventually paid for them, but the record company paid for them and they'd pay it back out of your royalties. And, you know, very big productions, but you kind of sat around till they went, okay, come up here and action and sit down for another hour while we set up this and blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't a very fun process. Sometimes they were great. We did a live clip for She's the One. That was fun because we didn't have to do much. The audience was there jumping around, blah, blah, blah. So Anthony had a very good original idea at the time. He said, with this kids album, why don't we shoot every track? And we go, oh, mate, you can't do that many. It costs you a fortune. And they had no money. And so on. He just said, no, we'll do it like live TV, where you've got 2, perhaps 3 camera shoot, you know, one getting the wide and the other doing close-ups. And after every take, we'll just walk behind the screen, play it back. Any mistakes? Nah, that's done. Bloody brilliant.
Unheard of, right?
Unheard of.
But brilliant.
But see, based on the experience we had being in a band where we did TV, we did clips, we know how to perform to cameras, you know.
Yeah.
And
were you in the Wiggles and those? Did you play any roles? Because I often get asked, you know, someone said to me the other day, wasn't Paul Captain Feathersword at one point or?
Yeah. So we all did. Is the short answer.
Yeah.
So I was Captain Feathersword in a few videos.
Yeah.
And when I eventually managed the Wiggles, I made sure we reshot those. But no, I was every single character in various clips. You know,
Dorothy, everybody.
There's no one around. Hey, Paul, guess what?
Your Wags the dog today.
I work cheap, you know. The funniest thing, actually, you probably find it on YouTube because, as I say, I honestly redid all our early stuff just to make it uniform look and quality level and all that kind of stuff. But the very first film clip the Wiggles did was Dorothy the Dinosaur, which was based on an old Cockroaches song called It's Another Saturday Night. Mm. And anyway, they shot it in the open at Darling Harbour. And same thing. Hey, Paul, you want to fit the Dorothy side? I went, yeah, sure, no worries. At that stage, very cottage industry. So Murray's then girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, Meg, made the costume. And they just said it was essentially a head and a tail, right? So wear green T-shirt and green jeans. Where we got those, I don't know. And they put gloves on me and a handbag as well, right? Now, there was no instruction, right, about the character is this, that, and the other. They just said, dance to the thing, right? You know, I said, okay, I can do that. And if you look at the clip, I have moments that are a total Mick Jagger. At one stage, I'm swinging the bag around in the air, right? You know, and it's like they're Jagger moves, not Dorothy.
Not Dorothy.
Not Dorothy.
But I had fun, hey?
Yeah.
And you've gone from like sweaty pubs to community halls with mums and dads.
Yes.
But of course, it became very big relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And you've moved on to places like Madison Square Garden and had celebrities wanting to clamour for, you know, a Wiggles concert, right?
Yeah, so what we decided to do, and Anthony was driving all of this with of course Murray, Jeff, and Greg, and they all contributed. But Anthony was very much always looking ahead, right? And even in the earliest days, after a few albums and videos, said we need a choreographer. And it's like, wow, that's forward thinking, you know, and stepped up. So you know. We then, and as you said, you know, they were touring. If you think it was hard work in the band for the Cockroaches, the Wiggles at one stage were doing 4 shows a day.
Wow.
And they're like 45 minutes to an hour shows. It's physically amazing. And they went everywhere, right? So they had a groundswell in the same way as the Cockroaches then sold massive amounts of albums because we toured everywhere. The Wiggles had the same template, right? But the missing link for there was TV, right? So no one wanted to touch us, right? No one believed in us in those early days, right? So we'd feed the ABC video clips, right? And then eventually, when I started managing them in about 97, we made some TV and I took it to Channel 7, and they had an output deal with Disney. So Disney and Seven worked together, and they all knew how popular the Wiggles were. And they went, yeah. And so we, funny enough, even though we were signed by the ABC, by 97, 98, when I was managing them, we were their biggest selling act in all genres.
Yeah, wow.
Yet they didn't play us on TV, apart from video clips.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in us, right?
Yeah, wow.
So Disney did.
Yeah. Is that when you went to the US?
Yeah, so Disney, even way back then, were very good at stats and numbers, and they with the bare minimum, they had individual film clips, and they scheduled them. They call it Wiggle Time. You know, I'm making these numbers up, but you know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, you know, every hour was Wiggle Time. They play a clip. There'd be an animated open and closer, and they saw their numbers go up when the Wiggles were on. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, hey,
we need more of that.
we need more of that. And so they ran a series, but they also wanted unique content. So they were the ones who said, how about we take you guys to Disneyland? And we were young enough to go, Disneyland! Oh, we need to perform. Okay, sure. It's true. And we'll shoot the concert and we'll own that. We'll just, you know, play it. And we went, yeah, of course, nothing to lose. By us playing over there in the States, we invited everyone, like from video companies, to come see us, including Disney. And we got signed to a video company at the time called Lyric, who were based in Texas, Dallas, Texas. And Lyric owned and created Barney the dinosaur, who was massive in America. I mean, big as you can get. They signed us, and we started touring, you know, like kid you not, like supporting Captain Kangaroo at SeaWorld. Seriously.
Yeah, wow.
You know, a blockbuster video where there was, I think, 10 people, right, just really trying hard to crack the nut. And then, in a bit of a Spinal Tap moment, but Lyric said, we love you guys. We know if people see you, they'll love you, right? So we'll get you to support Barney at Radio City Music Hall in New York, right? And that sounds like a bit Spinal Tap-ish. Wow, you're supporting. And we literally came on and the intermission, right?
Yeah.
Now, if that was a rock group, most people are out,
Yeah.
getting a drink and whatever.
Yeah.
with kid shows, if you've got your kids settled and whatever, you're not moving, right? And in the season, they were there for weeks. They played to 90,000 New Yorkers. And what did all those good New Yorkers do? They said, wow, the Wiggles, my kid loved them. Where do you get their videos? And we were only in boutique scores, FAO Schwartz, Sony Brady, Noodle Canoodle. So they went online. And suddenly, after that short season at Radio City Music Hall, the Wiggles had 2 of our videos in the top 10 Amazon video sales. And someone at Walmart, the world's biggest retailer, said, who the hell are the Wiggles that have got 2 videos and we don't stock them? Let's get the Wiggles. They're all about sales.
Was this a moment for you where, and I say you, I mean the Wiggles, that were you surprised? Was this just taking off at such a great rate of knots, or did it feel like that at the time, or did it feel more like a slow sort of a thing where you'd been working for so many years in a band together?
Yeah.
Were you taken by surprise?
Not by surprise, but it's this. I'm serious when I say this. Our approach with the Cockroaches, like, wouldn't it be great to do a gig? Everything was cream on the cake. It was. We just loved performing. Same with the Wiggles. Anthony just wanted to be able to do it, to create music. The fact by the time we went to the States, that's like a great adventure, and anything was going to be great. And so those very humbling experiences, which might kill another band, it's like, mate, we'd been there in a band on the road when there was more people on stage than in the audience. You just rock out. And also when you know that what you're doing is good and that you will get a reaction. So there were ebbs and flows and ups and downs, and we just had to have confidence in ourselves, which we did. And even me in the selling of the Wiggles to Americans, and it's hard to contemplate now in a world that's so connected with the internet and God knows what. But back in those days, I kid you not, it's profoundly different. So Mad Max was dubbed, right? They didn't think they'd understand the Australian accent. When Thomas the Tank Engine, a huge English early childhood show, came to America, they dubbed that. They got rid of the English voices, and people out there listening prepare to be shocked. The guy they sacked, in inverted commas, to revoice that was narrating Thomas the Tank Engine was Ringo Starr from the Beatles.
Can you believe it?
So that's how serious they were. Yeah. So the biggest hurdle I had to overcome in just talking about the Wiggles to video distributors and retailers and all the rest of it was, okay, yeah, that's good. You're huge in Australia. That means nothing to us. Yeah. But the Americans at least do have it could be good. This is the country that sold pet rocks, right? So the English will shut you down pretty quickly. That's not like us, but the Yanks always think, ooh, it could work. So they'll talk nice to you, but you need to convince them. And you're so Australian, right? And we still are, right? Westies, right? Yeah. And here's the irony. So what I did say to Lyric before they had signed us was, look, this is educationally based. It's sound in the principles. It's entertaining, and it's international. Take the cassettes, video cassettes, give them to the preschools and say, take them home, play them to the kids, da-da-da. And they came back and went, oh, my God, my kid loves this. The preschool loves it. That's what got them over the line, right? So that's how they originally signed us. And here's the huge irony of that, right? Normally, in the old days when people bought things, the glorious era in America, they'd sign you and then they would spend a fortune promoting you, saying, here's the new great act, from Australia, the Wiggles, da-da-da. Whereas we stood out because we sounded different. We looked different. And in entertainment, we were new.
Yeah.
And that you can't buy
the next
that.
big thing. Yeah.
We were, and I guess that's the other Australian background. Being in a band, you need to be able to cut it live, or that's it. You're gone. And we were aware of that. And 3 of the guys were early childhood teachers, so they knew what worked with children. And to this day, they'd finish a show, and Anthony still is the creative director and producer. He'd go, hey, mate, when you come in from that side, they didn't react. So how about you come in from that side, or let's cut this down. Just redoing the show continuously. And he loved it. But yeah, we went from there. And the big turning point was we eventually got signed by the Disney Channel, which was, this is pre-internet, God help us all, but it was cable. And they were after something new. They saw what we were doing, and again, it was something fresh, and we were in discussions with them, and they spoke to their Australian comrades, right? And they had nothing but praise. And they actually, I remember meeting with them for the first time, and with the guy who had just taken over our video company, who was an English bloke, who had been in Australia for a number of years helping run Triple M. Yeah, seriously.
Right.
So a smart guy, and he knew the success of the Wiggles. So we sat down before we met with Disney, and he said, how'd you break it in Australia, and how'd you, with the Disney Channel and da-da-da? I said, that Wiggle Time thing, they played individual film clips. He went, great, let's do that. So we met with Disney. He said, let's start, almost like my approach to the Australian Heritage Hotel. Let's start and see how you dig it, how your audience reacts. So they started with film clips, which they call interstitials, right? And they had that reaction. They went, oh, wow, right? So they were then about to launch their preschool channel, Playhouse Disney. And they went, do you have a TV series? Well, yes, we have a number of those. And so they got us to write and perform the theme song for Playhouse Disney. I mean, God help us all.
Yeah. Like you said before, it's about luck as well as talent, right?
That's it. If we weren't great songwriters, and they are, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, Hot Potato could be a jingle, right? They're that catchy, you know?
Yeah.
And Disney, I don't need to tell you how great at marketing they are. Yeah. So our show was on 4 times a day. The theme song as the channel was the Wiggles singing it. And I might add, I had the deep voice on that. I'll just get that out there. Okay. I work cheap.
You've said that numerous times.
Yeah. So, and you last longer when you just say yes to, we need you to do this. Yeah. But it was great fun. It was awesome. And God help us, that transformed us from literally playing a small theatre in Weehawken, New Jersey, to within a year, Madison Square Garden Theatre, 11 sold out shows. So it was a rocket ship underneath us. And like in Australia, when you finally get on TV, you don't need to be doing 400 gigs a year. Still great if you can, because you make money from it.
Yeah.
But TV is
the awareness is there.
Yeah. And so you mentioned the celebs. That's the point. We're on the Disney Channel. And so, we had John Travolta come up to Anthony and I. We're at a G'day Australia event. And Travolta comes up, and his boy Jet was a huge Wiggles fan. And he literally put his hand on each of our shoulders. We turned around, it's John Travolta. And he goes, where's Captain Feathersword? And, it's like, whoa! And, to Robert De Niro, to Jerry Seinfeld, you name it. And guys from, I think it was Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. Unlikely Wiggle fans.
But got kids, right?
But that's it. That's the key.
Yeah.
And I'm just, James, the singer for Metallica, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So he was in the audience with his daughters, of course, still wearing sunglasses.
Of course.
But that's the big equaliser to their children. The Wiggles are Metallica.
Exactly.
And it is magical, and John Fogerty from Creedence.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, God help us. I grew up with Creedence posters on my wall.
Yeah.
And he remarried and had a young daughter, Kelsey, who was a Wiggle fanatic. And Anthony Murray ran into John Fogerty at the Universal Amphitheatre in Los Angeles. The Wiggles had sold it out. And, of course, he recognised John Fogerty. He went, Murray, So Anthony said, get on to him. He's a fan. Right? So I did. And I worked my way, and he invited me to his house, and we had a great talk, and then he recorded a song with us. We videoed him, just those amazing things. And the big connector on all that was the music. And John Fogerty, apart from it being a huge connection with his daughter, but also because he sung with us and videoed with us, he'd play the Christmas video that he was on. And as soon as it came on, she'd go, Daddy! And he wrote me a note, which clearly I still have.
Yes.
An email saying, hey, buddy, I owe you one. My daughter gets excited about seeing you guys, blah, 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 blah. So, it was amazing. And we did occasionally, well, I can tell you, Robert De Niro came to see the Wiggles and brought his partner and his little boy at the time at the Beacon Theatre. And we met with him, we chatted with him, lovely bloke, right? And at the end of the show, he walks away, and I went up with Anthony to his dressing room, and he went, "We're just blown away. Like we were speechless," which, as you can hear, we can talk under cement.
Yeah.
We were both speechless. And he came out with a great line. He went, "No offence to them, but if we meet someone from Home and Away, it's just not going to be the same."
You've got a family-friendly empire now, well and truly happening. Walmart, Disney.
Yeah.
There must have been moments of burnout, particularly as far as managing the business was concerned too.
Yeah, okay. Certainly with the guys themselves, physical burnout was very true. And Anthony himself, actually, and we were, there's a stage in your life, that first third, the 20s, where we're indestructible.
Yeah.
You can eat all the crap you want. There's no problem, right? But eventually it starts to take its toll, right? And so, yeah, and Anthony suffers from depression. He's spoken about that. And he was unaware of what it was, though. And he'd have these great highs, and then after a show, be just down. And found that if he exercised, he was a bit better. So he didn't connect it at that stage, and hadn't had a name for it. But he'd had a bit of therapy and stuff. But yeah, he burnt out physically and mentally occasionally, right? And so we made sure things were much healthier for him. And he's very much, he's got some impulse in him, right? No kidding. And he would very much, I met this guy as a juggler. Let's get him in the show.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And it would grow from there, and suddenly it's a circus thing. It's like, hey, that was a good move.
That actually worked. But the other thing about, you talk about the Wiggles and the burnout, sometimes doing four shows a day.
Yeah.
When you're looking at your competitors in the children's market and you've got, let's say Barney, right?
Yeah.
You could put anybody in the Barney suit
That's true.
and no one will know. But when the kids go to see a Wiggle show, they want to see Wake Up Jeff, they want to see Murray, they want to see, so there's you're limited in how much they can do because they're real people.
That's very true.
That was their success.
Yes.
Was based on that, but they're real people, and there's only so much that they can do. Whereas if you're up against a Dora the Explorer, they can write that many cartoons.
Yes.
300 cartoons a year.
That's it.
And you're competing against that. What was that like?
Well, it is tough on the guys physically, and also by this stage, some of them had children. It's tough on being separated from your kids and your wife and partner, and. So yeah, that needs sorting. You breaks need to be built into the schedule.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. But it's it does take its toll. I mean, Greg eventually had to retire from the Wiggles. He got a condition, which he was fainting all the time, et cetera, and he had to retire. And
it's not just the touring, because if you're touring 6 months of the year, when do you then come back and do content and do more videos?
Yeah.
You've got to factor that into your schedule.
Very much so. And even though it's fun, it's full on. And when you say touring, it's actually 9 months of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. And our biggest, most successful touring year, which says it all, as in time and scale, we did 3 tours of North America, 250,000 tickets per tour. So that's 750,000 people saw us in North America. And then rest of the world, being Australia, Asia, Europe, 250,000 tickets. We did 1 million tickets in 2003. So they're not stadiums. So to get to that number, that's lots of shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's an interesting life. A couple of my children toured as performers with the Wiggles, and my son Luke was in touring management, et cetera, and we'd be watching a show, and they go, "Oh, it's Tallahassee," and Claire would go, "I've been to Tallahassee," and she said, "What it was like?" She said, "I don't know." Seriously, because you turn up in a bus the night before.
Yeah, do the show.
You go to the hotel. No, because the shows are during the day.
Yeah.
You get in the shows, you do your daytime thing, and then you drive to the next city. And we of course, plan days off in a good place, like somewhere where there is something to see, not the desert.
No.
But yeah. So it's a great lifestyle, as in its success and whatever. But it's no question, touring's not for everyone. It is hard. You got to work it out. You got to manage it properly. But yeah, it was a wild, fun ride, and to be a part of that, it's one of the great pleasures, let alone business, career, whatever you want to term it, because I was part of that success. I helped sell them. I was part of the discussions when things weren't going great, and you'd meet with the video company based in Dallas, and it was all about what's the stuff you got coming up. And I can remember this very well, this conversation, because also you had to be able to not only sell to the company who's going to sell your product to retail, but they would get you meetings with the head of video at, say, Target US or Walmart US. Pressure's on. And it won't be, they're coming to office. We've got to go to such and such place, like the licensing fair. We're going to introduce you to Kaylee, and she's the head of video sales. Yeah. Right? So they know the Wiggles. They've sold a lot of Wiggles videos, but it's all about the next thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can remember this because I had a lot to sell, and it was very exciting. And I could do it in 30 seconds. I said, hey, Paul, this is Kaylee. Tell about the new video you're coming up. Oh, it's going to come out in, pick a month, October. It's called Wiggly Safari, and it's all about Australian animals, and it stars the Wiggles and Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter.
Done. Sold.
Tick. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
15 seconds, she went, wow, that sounds awesome, right?
Yeah.
And because I've got to say, prior to that, was still selling really well, but the title before that was a bit down on the one before. So, they panic, of course, and oh, wow, we need something. Well, and because I'm aware of the sales job you need to do on everything, right? Nothing's constant. Nothing's linear. You can be up and down, da-da-da. Yeah. So when we shot Wiggly Safari, and Steve Irwin and his wife, Terry, the little girl, Bindi, who was 3 at the time, for God's sake, just the world's loveliest people. They really are. Just passionate about animals, etc. And Steve would do anything, right? But he loved the Wiggles because we'd say, we're going to be setting up for the next half hour. Go do what you want, Steve. We'll call you when you're ready. Yeah! He'd race off and wrestle with crocodiles or do a show, whatever. He loved that because mostly in entertainment, you're sitting around doing nothing. Yeah. So he loved working with this. And I said, Steve, if you don't mind, I'll get you to do a pitch for Walmart, for Target. Hey, Target, I'm doing this thing with the Wiggles. That's magic, that stuff.
Yeah.
Worth
gold, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. And it's like you speak to them and they can use that. And we did this stuff. We did voiceovers of the Wiggles and Steve that they would play in the aisles, and that type of stuff. Needless to say, it was a huge success. But that's why it was an exciting time where you could. This was an idea we had, and same thing actually. I can tell you, like get in contact with John Fogarty. The Wiggles on their tour bus in the States would travel around, and that's why I went, wow, Steve Irwin's huge over here, and he's an Aussie. Get in touch with him, Paul. Yeah. See if he wants to do something. Oh, okay. Yeah. And his manager, John Staten at the time, lovely bloke, and so getting through to the Steves is the big challenge. And they were doing a million things, had a movie coming up and blah, 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 blah. So it was generally, look, we got no time, da-da-da. And I called him back at one stage because he was on the footy show. I said, John, if he's got time to fly down to the footy show, we are the world's quickest and most efficient recorders and producers. He said, okay, come up and you got to sell it to Steve. I said, okay. I'm thinking, bloody hell. So and I meet. He said, oh, he's out there. So I go, Steve, hey, lovely to meet you. How's Captain Feathersword?
There you go, you're in.
And then he asked these questions. Like I thought, oh, okay. He's seen the shows and he was quoting funny lines from the Wiggles. So he loved them, right? Yeah. And of course, his daughter loved them. Yeah. So the next step, and so I thought, oh, we're in, right? Yeah. And then we spoke about how long we take and all this kind of stuff. And I said, no, it's going to be concise, going to be real easy. And we made it that way. And also Bindi was a huge fan. So the next step was, I'll bring the Wiggles up to meet you because if we can't get along with them, there's going to be no video. But it was just great fun and the rest of it. And the funniest bit of that was Bindi has grown up with wild animals. She literally came out holding a large snake. I don't want to name it because I'll get it wrong. Yeah. But an oversized flag around her shoulders. Greg was terrified. Why am I laughing? Poor Greg. But it was just a great fun time. And, it was just so exciting to be riding the wave of the zeitgeist. You know? Everyone knew us, you know.
And you'd had experience with wild animals, with Wags the dog and Henry the octopus,
Yes.
Dorothy dinosaur. But
I thought you were going to say roadies.
That too.
let's roll it forward a little bit about you. Your
Yes.
solo albums, the Countdown
Oh, okay.
Live
Yeah.
shows. How does it feel coming back to those musical roots now? And how's it all going?
Oh, it's great. Look, I retired from the Wiggles, ceased working, however you want to term it, was booted out. No. We've had enough of you. Just before COVID, I'd worked 24 years for the Wiggles. Again, fantastic. But I knew change was happening. It was different and the rest of it, but not in my work. Claire said to me, you never would have left. I'd be still on the road with them, If they would have had me that long, I'm not sure. But I knew change was happening, and my wife had retired after 20 years of working in an all-boys high school. And I thought, you know what? Her whole life being married to me and dating me, I've been in a band, travelling with the Courts, with the band, with the Wiggles. It's her time, or our time, I should say, because none of us know how long we're going to be around, right? Seriously. And this is the time to enjoy it. So, and then COVID hit, and I'm glad all those changes happening. I loved working with the Wiggles. And now I'm glad I'm not. You know, my son is now the general manager there. My youngest son works with them. My daughter-in-law works with them. My niece, Lucia's a Wiggle. You know, it's still there. I still know what's going on. But I'm glad I changed gear. And the same as Jeff. I mean, you mentioned the shows I'm in. I play in a rockabilly band called the Sacred Hearts, and we do the clubs. We just do 1950 stuff. It's pure fun. And who's the keyboard player in that band? Jeff Fatt. So I've been playing with Jeff since I was a teenager. Like, seriously, you know? Yeah. And it's wild. We turn up to do these gigs and people are going, that's Jeff from the Wiggles.
Let's wake up Jeff. Yeah.
And the countdown show that I do, I mean, it's just pure joy. We do 80s songs, basically the hits of the 70s and 80s, right? So, you know, it's our age group and on that just know what they're going to get. It's fun doing it, and it's contagious again. So as long as I can, doing a gig and going to shows, I love going to shows still. It's like an injection for me.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is that you're just going to keep doing it now until it's not fun anymore?
Yeah.
You can see yourself doing it for the foreseeable future, which is great for all of us who love watching you perform.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm serious, and we always look to the Stones.
Well,
they're amazing, and because it's all about the music, and that's the great thing. You know, we're very lucky to be a part of that countdown era generation, you know, where it was, and even nowadays, where music's very fashionable. Okay, this is the latest TikTok hit, and next month you're gone.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Whereas preschool music is timeless. Music that we're doing now, same thing. It's just all about entertaining, and particularly as, you know, as the economies go up and down and wages go up and down and stock market crash, whatever, people will always look to entertain themselves or get enjoyment. And that's why they're called punters, because, okay, I could go to 8 different joints tonight. And that's why we say the countdown show that we do, it's like, okay, they're doing the hits of the 70s, 80s. They got old mate singing. Okay, that sounds like I'd enjoy those shows. That's what we do.
Yeah,
you know, we do it because we love it, and they keep turning up, so we'll keep it going.
You've been married to the lovely Pauline. Is it 40 years or so?
40 years, yes. Yeah.
What's through fame and grief? Is there a secret to keeping that relationship strong?
Yeah. I mean, Dad used to say this, again, a wise bloke. And he said, when you're going out with someone, you need to tick a lot of boxes, you know, that you get on, that you like each other. This sounds obvious things, but, you know, if there are cultural things like similar, they can help. But, you know, if you've got troubles when you're dating, mate, don't go ahead.
Yeah.
And from the word go with Pauline, you know, I loved her, right? You know, like after a very short time, I was like, oh, bloody hell. She's
I really dig this chick. Yeah.
Yeah, no, as in like.
She is the one.
Dare I say.
Yeah.
Is this too quick, you know? But back to it. We just always communicate really well. Every relationship has challenges, but as long as you can talk it through, right? And we do, and that's kind of it. But the main thing is, to this day, we really enjoy each other's company, right? And we've got so much invested, and I don't mean that in a clinical term, as in the history with each other nourishes us, and now literally grandchildren, God help us, we're next level. Like it's falling in love again. You can't stop thinking about them, talking about them, showing photos. And Pauline and I enjoy them together. Yeah. We do lots of stuff together. We enjoy doing stuff together. And this will sound crazy to some people. And I just finished working with the Wiggles, but when COVID hit, I actually said, this is actually great. I love being with Pauline. We were going to travel together. Okay, that had to change. But it was great to actually have time out and to be together. Seriously. Yeah. So, just we work at stuff. It's not the same. It's never the same. We make sure we do things that are enjoyable. We travel together. We do stuff with the kids, without the kids, with the grandkids, without the kids. I think we just keep it happening. And also, hey, I'm going to see Rodrigo Gabriella. Do you want to come, Pauline? I can't stand up for that long. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't have to do what I do and vice versa. And it's not anything but no worries. She knows what I dig, what she doesn't. There's stuff we'll do together, and that's great. Yeah. And when we do stuff together, even like seeing Springsteen, who I've seen many times, and the Stones, it's actually even better when I'm with her. When you enjoy something, if you're with someone you love and enjoy being with, it's even better. Yeah,
to share those moments. So you're making memories with her and you're sharing those with her and you can relive them later.
Yeah, and just as much as we can, being in the moment. Like this is good. Yes. This is great. Yeah. And with the little ones, like the babies, I'm the rookie back into it, and I was heavily involved with the kids to some extent. I was also touring and stuff, but they would chuckle out there listening. But anyway, with the little ones, because they're just two girls and a little boy, but the two girls are together. And the older one, who's now 4, and the younger one is now 2. The older one's very much, they call her Polly instead of Pauline, Polly, which is lovely. And the older one is kind of like, well, Polly's mine. And she will often say to me, Papa, you take Frankie, right? Yeah. And you take it to bed. And it's like, wow, I've just been given my marching order. Yes. But it was good because in the days when she'd have a sleep, that was my job. Yeah. I'd nurse her and I'd walk back and forth in a darkened room singing to her, which was beautiful. Yeah. And then I'd put her in the cot and she'd kind of wake up. And so I'd go from the walking, okay, she's asleep, and sit down and she'd be asleep. And eventually I thought, do you know what? This is beautiful. I bloody love this, right? So there is no place on the world I'd rather be than here right now with this baby in my arms. Seriously. Yeah. And I said, I'm not going to put her in the cot. I'll stay here. And Pauline occasionally would come up thinking, God, he's been up there a while. And occasionally my head would be down. I'd be asleep with her in my arms in the big chair.
Isn't that beautiful?
And eventually I put her down. But that will remain with me forever. That's being in the moment, appreciating them. And same with Pauline. We share those experiences, and they're banal to other people, but the older one made toast yesterday and she rang me up to tell me. Oh. It's bloody great. Anyway, sorry.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time on the podcast, and I could just listen to you talk for hours. It's just, you've got so many wonderful stories, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast, The Big 60.
Oh, pleasure being with you guys, and hopefully Guy will find his marbles.
Yes, hopefully.
Paul, thanks, man.
Sorry, for those out there listening, we just did the wiggle fingers.
Yes.
The views and opinions expressed on the Big 60 are personal and reflect those of the hosts and guests. They do not represent the views or positions of any affiliated organisations or companies. This podcast is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for guidance on any personal matters.
Oh, and before we go, let's give credit where credit is due. Kaylee Harris and I came up with all the genius content for this week's episode. Our producer, Nick Abood, well, he keeps the lights on and makes sure we don't accidentally upload a cat video instead of a podcast. So thanks for keeping us on track, Nick. Nick, Nick.